Hello, guys and gals, and this is the final part of this series. This is part 19 of our reading of The Last Unicorn by Peter Beagle. In the last episode, King Lear is learning how to be a king again. He was Prince Lear, and now he is touring his kingdom, and Smindrick and Molly are still there helping him. And spring is coming back to the barren land that was Haggard's, and it's like 50 springs happening at once. All the animals are coming back. It's wonderful. And we are going to this. Whenever they stopped, he left. Okay, wait. We're going to read this. We're going to read this chapter right here just for context. We usually read the chapter before, so we have a context going on. The folk of the villages greeted them cautiously and with little less dourness than they had shown when Smindrick and Molly first came that way. Only the oldest among them had ever seen the spring before, and many suspected the rampaging greenness of being a plague or an invasion. King Lear told them that Haggard was dead and the Red Bull gone forever, invited them to visit him whenever his new castle was raised, and pressed on. They will need time to feel comfortable with flowers, he said. Whenever they stopped, he left word that all outlaws were pardoned, and Molly hoped that the news would come to Captain Colley and his merry men. As it happened, it did, and all the merry band immediately abandoned the life of the green wood, saving only Colley himself and Jack Jingley. Together, they took up the trade of wandering minstrels and were reported to have become reasonably popular in the provinces. One night, the three slept at the farthest frontier of Lear's kingdom, making their beds in high grass. The king would bid them farewell in the morning and return to Hagsgate. It will be lonely, he said in the darkness. I would rather go with you, and not be king. Oh, you'll get to like it, Smindrick replied. The best young men of the village will make their way to your court, and you will teach them to be knights and heroes. The wisest of minstrels will come to counsel you, and most skillful magicians and jugglers and storytellers will come seeking your favor. And there will be a princess in time, either fleeing her unspeakably wicked father and brothers or seeking justice for them. Perhaps you will hear of her, shut away in a fortress or flint and adamant, in a fortress of flint and adamant. Her only companion, a compassionate spider. I don't care about that, King Lear said. He was silent for so long that Smindrick thought he had fallen asleep, but presently he said, I wish I could see her once more to tell her all my heart. She will never know what I really meant to say. You did promise that I would see her. The magician answered him sharply. I promised only that you would see some sign of unicorns, and so you have. Your realm is blessed beyond any lands deserving, because they have passed along it in freedom. As for you and your heart and the things that you said that you said and didn't say, she will remember them all when men are fairy tales and books written by rabbits. Think of that and be still. The king spoke no more after that, and Smindrick repeated his words. She touched you twice, he said in a little while. The first touch was to bring you to life again, but the second was for you. Lear did not answer, and the magician never knew if he heard or not. Smindrick dreamed that the unicorns came and stood by him at moonrise. The thin night wind lifted and spilled her mane, and the moonlight shone on the snowflakes crafting of her small head. He knew it was a dream, but he was happy to see her. How beautiful you are, he said. I never really told you. He would have roused the others, but his eyes sang him a warning as clear. But her eyes sang him a warning as clearly as two frightened birds, and he knew that if he moved to call Molly and Lear, he would wake himself, and she would vanish. So he said only, They love you more. I think, though I do the best I can. That is why, she said, and he could not tell what she was answering. He lay very still, hoping that he would remember the exact shape of her ears. When he did wake in the morning, she said, "You are a true and mortal wizard now, as you always wished. Does it make you happy?" "Yes," he replied, with a quiet laugh. "I'm not poor haggard to lose my heart's desire in the having of it, but there are wizards and wizards. There's black magic and white magic, and the infinite shades of gray between, and I see now that it is all the same. Whether I decide to be what men would call a wise and good magician, aiding heroes, thwarting witches, wicked lords, and unreasonable parents, making rain, curing wool sorter's disease, and the mad staggers, getting cats down from trees, or whether I choose to resort, or if I choose the retorts full of elixirs and essences and powders and herbs and banes and padlocked books of Gramier bound in skin. Oh, I think that's probably like a grimoire. In skin better left unnamed, the muddy mists darkening in the chamber, and the sweet voice lisping therein. Why, life is short, and how many can I help or harm? I have my power at last, but the world is still too heavy for me to move through. My friend Lear might think otherwise. And he laughed again in his dream, a little sadly. The unicorn said, "That is true. You are a man, and men can do nothing that makes any difference." But her voice was strangely slow and burdened. She asked, "Which will you choose?" The magician laughed for a third time. "Oh, it will be the kind magic, undoubtedly, because you would like it more. I do not think that I will even ever see you again, but I will try to do what would please you if you knew. And you, where will you be for the rest of your life? I thought you would have gone home to your forest by now." She turned a little away from him, and the sudden starlight of her shoulders made all his talk of magic taste like sand in his throat. Moths and midgets and other night insects, too small to be anything in particular, came and danced slowly around her bright horn, and this did not make her appear foolish, but them most wise and lovely as they celebrated her. Molly's cat rubbed in and out between her forefeet. "The others have gone," she said. "They are scattered to the woods they came from. No two together, and men will not catch sight of them much more easily than if they were still in the sea. I will go back to my forest too, but I do not know if I will live contentedly there, or anywhere. I have been mortal, and some part of me is mortal yet. I am full of tears and hunger and the fear of death, though I cannot weep, and I want nothing, and I cannot die. I am not like the others now, for no unicorn was ever born who could regret, but I regret." Smendrick hid his face like a child, though he was a great magician. I'm sorry, he mumbled into his wrist. "I have done you evil, as Nikos did to the other unicorn, with the same good will, and I can no more undo it than he could. Mommy Fortuna and King Haggard and the Red Bull together were kinder to you than I." But she answered him gently, saying, "My people are in the world again. No sorrow will live in me as long as that joy, save one, and I thank you for that too. Farewell, good magician. I will try to go home." She made no sound when she left him, but he was awake, and the crooked-eared cat was meowing lonesomely. Turning his head, he saw the moonlight trembling in the open eyes of King Lear and Molly Grew. The three of them lay awake, still till morning, and no one said a word. At dawn, King Lear rose up and saddled his horse. Before he mounted, he said to Schmidrick and Molly, "I would like it if you came to see me one day." They assured him that they would, but still he lingered with them, twisting and dangling reins about his fingers. "I dreamed of her last night," he said. Molly cried, "So did I," and Schmidrick opened his mouth and then closed it again. King Lear said hoarsely, By our friendship, I beg you, tell me what she said to you." His hands gripped one hand, each of theirs, and his clutch was cold and painful. Schmidrick gave him a weak smile. "My lord, I so rarely remember my dreams. It seemed to me that we spoke solemnly of silly things, as one does, grave nonsense, empty and evanescent." The king let go of his hand and turned his half-mad gaze to Molly Grew. "I'll never tell," she said, a little frightened, but flushed oddly. "I remember, but I'll never tell anyone, if I die for it. Not even you, my lord." She was not looking at him as she spoke, but at Schmidrick. King Lear let his hand fall as well, and he swung himself into the saddle so fiercely that the horse reared up across the sunrise, bugling like a stag. But Lear kept his seat and glared down at Molly and Schmidrick with a face so grim and scored and sunken that he might have been king as long as Haggard before him. "She said nothing to me," he whispered. "Do you understand? She said nothing to me at all." Then his face softened, as even King Haggard's face had gone a little gentle when he watched the unicorns in the sea. For that moment he was again the young prince who had liked to sit with Molly in the scullery. He said, "She looked at me in my dream. She looked at me and never spoke." He rode away without goodbye, and they watched after him until the hills hid him, a straight, sad horseman going home to be king. Molly said at last, "Oh, that poor man, poor Lear." "He has not fared so badly," the magician answered. "Great heroes need great sorrows and burdens, or half their greatness goes unnoticed. It is all part of the fairy tale." But his voice was a little doubtful, and he laid his arm softly around Molly's shoulders. "It cannot be an ill fortune to have loved a unicorn," he said. "Surely it must be the dearest luck of all, though the hardest earned." By and by he put her as far from him as his fingers' ends, and asked her, "Now will you tell me what it was she said to you?" But Molly Grew only laughed and shook her head till her hair came down, and she was more beautiful than the Lady Amalthea. The magician said, "Very well, then. I'll find the unicorn again, and perhaps she will tell me." And he turned calmly and whistled up their steeds. She said no word while he saddled his horse, but when he began on her own, she put her hand on his arm. Do you truly hope that we might find her? There was something I forgot to say." Schmidrick looked at her over his shoulder. The morning sunlight made his eyes seem gay as grass. But now and then, when he stooped into the horse's shadow, they stirred a deeper greenness in his gaze. "The green of pine needles that has a faint, cool bitterness about it," he said. "I fear it, for her sake. It would mean that she too is a wanderer now, and that is a fate for human beings, not for unicorns. But I hope, of course, I hope." Then he smiled at Molly and took her hand in his. "Anyways, since you and I must choose one road to follow out of the many that run to the same place in the end, it might as well be a road that a unicorn has taken. We may never see her, but we will always know where she has been. Come then, come with me." So they began their new journey, which took them in its time in and out of most of the folds of the sweet, wicked, wrinkled world, and so, at last, to their own strange and wonderful destiny. But that was all later, and first, not 10 minutes out of Lear's kingdom, they met a maiden who came hurrying towards them on foot. Her dress was torn and smirched, but the richness of its making was still plain to see, and though her hair was tumbled and brambled, her arms scratched, and her fair face dirty, there was no mistaking her for anyone but a princess in woeful distress. Smindrick lightened down to support her, and she clutched him with both hands as though he were a grapefruit haul. "A rescue!" she cried at him. "A rescue! Au secours! And ye be a man of mettle and sympathy. Aid me now. I hight the Princess Alison Jocelyn, daughter of good King Giles, and him foully murdered by his brother, the bloody Duke Wolf, who hath taken my 3 brothers, the Princes Corin, Colin, and Calvin, and cast them into a fell prison as hostages, that I will wed with his fat son, the Lord Dudley. But I bribed the sentry and sopped the dogs. But Smendrick the magician raised his hand, and she fell silent, staring up at him in wonder out of lilac eyes. "Fair princess," he said gravely to her, "the man you want just went that way," and he pointed back towards the land that had so lately quitted. "Take my horse, and you will be up with him while your shadow is still behind you." He cupped his hand for the Princess Alison Jocelyn, and she climbed wearily in some bewilderment to the saddle. Smendrick turned the horse, saying, "You will surely overtake him with ease, for he will be riding slowly. He is a good man, and a hero greater than any cause is worth. I send all my princesses to him. His name is Lear." Then he slapped the horse on the rump and sent it off, the way King Lear had gone. Then he laughed for so long that he was too weak to get up behind Molly, and had to walk beside the horse for a while. When he caught his breath again, he began to sing, and she joined with him, and this is what they sang, as they went away together, out of this story and into another. "I am no king, I am no lord, I am no soldier in arms," said he. "I'm none but a harper, and a very poor harper, that am come hither to wed with ye. If ye were a lord, you should be my lord, and the same if ye were a thief," said she, "and if you are a harper, you shall be my harper, for it makes no matter to me, for it makes no matter to me. But what if it prove that I am no harper, that I lied for your love most monstrously? Why then I'll teach you to play and sing, for I clearly love a good harp," said she. And that is where it ends. We have been reading The Last Unicorn, and that's it. It was 19 episodes, and so it took a long time, but this was a good book. This was The Last Unicorn by Peter Beagle, and this was the last episode. It was a wonderful read, a very nice fantasy novel, a classic in my opinion. And so yeah, if you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. And if you want to support me in any way at all that information will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.